Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to another Supercoach Insider podcast. My name is Swiz, here with my 2025 Team Picker first team discussion. Yes, it is out for anybody with Supercoach Gold, so for those who do have it, I'm sure you guys have already been playing with your teams. For those who are waiting for the full release, which should be early January, here's a chance for you to have a look at what players are in what positions and players that we should be monitoring through the preseason and their prices. Before I jump into it, as always, check us out on all our social media platforms, in particular YouTube, Spotify. Get in contact with us via X, Supercoach Insider 100, or Swiz26 for me directly. Now, if you haven't already seen, Ben and Chris have put out their first team discussions for the season, so it'd be kind of interesting to see how ours differ so far. I haven't actually watched theirs yet, but I will be once concluding mine. But we also did get together finally for a group discussion, 2 hours of us talking absolute tripe. The banter's back. There was already a bet made, so it was a lot of fun having the boys back. They are back bigger and better than ever for 2025 after missing a lot of this season, but it will be great to have them around talking Supercoach again. So as I jump in, the biggest change this year is the flex position. For those who aren't playing BBL, we have had a 31st position added. The overall salary cap has not changed, but the prices have changed. So we now do see that the rookie prices are down to 99,000, which is obviously a very different situation, which probably does allow us to squeeze a few more of those cheaper players in. It's actually a bit different looking at these guys not being 102 and being under the 100 mark. So that will be interesting, and also how we use our flex position for these for the entire season. So I think early on we'll be looking at probably trying to get an extra rookie, or some people are looking at that extra ruck cover. And then as the season goes on, when we get that 23rd premium position, which we usually are able to do by after the buys, that'll be the aim, to try to get that 23rd premium in. Definitely, I think that the big effect on it's going to be the forward line. That F6 position probably can either potentially look at just kind of scrapping it or leaving a rookie in there for longer, as you want to try to upgrade extra premiums for either the midfield defender or get that third ruck in, especially, which is handy to cover your rucks, where what Luke Jackson did last year for a lot of us. And the other part is, if it is a forward and F6 in there, we probably can take a little bit more risks with who we pick. Normally, we're trying to look for those midfielders or forwards who are playing a lot more midfield. And pretty well the only one we've really got left is Jason Horne-Francis this year, as a lot have moved on. We will pick up potentially some throughout the season. Didn't probably have the big change last year, but if we do, they can potentially swap into there. But the F6 probably taking more of a risk, maybe with some key forwards who at any given week can go big. Let's just say Charlie Curnow, McKay, Jeremy Cameron, those sort of guys. They might put up a 40, but can put up 120 plus on any given week. So I can see some of them being in our teams as the season goes on, because if they were to fail, we'll have that flex position to cover if they were to put up a very low score. So yeah, early on, the rookies, it's probably nullifies the risk a little bit of putting those rookies on field, because sometimes we've got that debate between two rookies, and we always see the one that we put on field probably is the one that scores lower and compared to the other one. So now we're able to put as many of those playing rookies on field as possible and use them against each other on the flex position. Now, we've got the buys back this year. So round 2, 3, and 4, we've got the early buys for the teams involved in the opening rounds. So 2 was the Suns and the Giants. Round 3, we've got the Lions, Pies, Cats and Swans, and then round 4, Essendon and Hawthorn. So technically they're playing one less game for us in Supercoach, because the opening round does not count towards our scores. And then we kick off in the middle for round 12, and this year it's a bit different. It's over 5 rounds. So we've got Carlton, Northport, and the Doggies. Round 13, Freo and the Saints. 14, Pies, Tigers, Swans, and the Suns. Round 15, Crows, Hawks, Demons, and Eagles. And then finally in round 16, the Lions, the Bombers, the Cats, and the Giants. So Don't have the big flood of 6 teams in any round, so we'll probably be able to manage our buys a little bit easier than we have before. But yeah, those teams involved in the opening round, so Brisbane, Geelong, Suns, and Bombers, Giants, and Collingwood, and Sydney and Hawthorn. It's going to be kind of harder to pick a lot of those players. We saw with that last season, even though a few of us tried to do it, it was better to actually take the players who weren't involved as much in the opening round, because we get to the we get that extra game in, and we don't have to try to go through that buy area. So I think a good one last year was kind of Dacos, as much as he scored pretty well early on. I think those teams that didn't start him were probably a little bit ahead of the game when they were able to bring him in. Another one was in the rucks, as good as Gawn was. Grundy probably, bit of a false score for us in that round 0 match. Probably didn't light the world on fire until after his bye. And those who started Tristan Cherry were really rewarded. So, yeah, I'll be trying to avoid the buys. Unfortunately, we can't, because there's so many great players who have an early buy with value. But just trying to manage that as much in my starting squad at the moment as possible. And the big one is round 3 with the Lions, Pies, Cats, and Swans. They have a lot of relevant players, but I don't want. At first, I was like, I could easily fit 10 or 11 players in here, but that's going to leave me with less than 22. And even though it's best 18, I still want to have as many players kind of playing as possible, able to use that flex and potentially able to use loopholes on each line. So, a lot of my thinking with this team at the moment has gone into a bit of buy planning as well. All right, so I'll jump into who I've actually got. So the premium at the moment is Sheasel. Not a big fan of Flanders at the moment, because I want to see how his role goes now with Rioli and Noble coming in. Lockie Whitfield's also got that early buy, Zorko. So of the one premium that I like, it's Sheasel. Don't mind Sinclair in that next line. He was the 7th overall. Houston, it'd be interesting to see how he fits in. We don't get to see that in round 0 because he is suspended. So we won't get as much knowledge on how Houston is tracking, but he is one that I'll probably be looking at after the Pies buy, depending on the role. Nick Martin, again, there's some different talks about how the Bombers are going to set up, but he did look good at halfback. So, sort of those players in the range. It's I kind of wanted to see how things eventuate in the preseason, and Sheasel's the only one I'm kind of confident on, just because he's such a fantastic player. He's going to be like Nick Dacos last year. It's going to be our probably last chance. I think we'll get him in defence, so want to make the most of it. All right, going down a bit further, and this guy is at good value at 445, and that is Kane Farrell. I really did like the idea of Matty Robertson here, but again, the problem is with that Swans, with that early buy, as well as he finished, and under the new coach, Dean Cox, as much as I know him, how much he loves Matty Roberts, I just want to kind of see what happens in those early rounds. Farrell at the moment, I think, is a really good place getter. I think it was 9 tons last year, but the big thing is with Dan Houston leaving, there's going to be more reliant on Farrell, potentially Josh Sin coming into the halfback role. So I am looking at a Port player because, as we saw earlier, 106-point average last year Houston had. So that is a lot of points coming out of that Port Adelaide backline. So somebody's going to obviously have to pick up the slack there, and Farrell seems to be the obvious one for now. Moving on is the Swans captain, Callum Mills, obviously injury interrupted last year, missed the flag. I think he'll be trying to do everything he can to get the Pies up there again. So at 357 he comes in at. I am wanting to see sort of what role he plays, because I think he needs to be either at halfback or in the centre bounce to maximise his scoring. But for now, it's kind of hard to leave him out. Apparently, by all reports, he looks super fit again, and he'll have a massive point to prove for this year. And this is where potentially the Roberts Mills debate comes in, seeing how they go in preseason, see how they go in that opening game, because I probably only want to carry one of those Swans early on because of that early buy. And Mills being the cheaper one at the moment, and just obviously being the captain. I think he's the one I am leaning towards, and I think most of the competition are, but Roberts is one I'll be definitely keeping close eye on. Of those other defenders that we've just sort of passed, and there's a couple that I do also like, but it's that early buys affecting it. Harry Perryman is one at 417, so it'll be interesting to see sort of how he fits in to things at Collingwood. Apparently looking like midfield time, that sort of player that they can get in to kind of protect your Dacos to Goey. I don't seem to sort of have a player like him. McKercher, I want to kind of see what role he's going to fit into there at North this year. Is he going to continue off half back? Is he making a more transition to the midfield? So that's one of interest. And Max Holmes at Geelong, but he's not as of value at 533, but 14th highest last year. Can he push into that sort of top 10, top 8, top 6, especially with Bailey Smith coming in and supporting him, but again has an early buy, so that's a little bit frustrating in regards to wanting to start somebody like him. Potentially a Saints player in Wanganeen Malira, I've already mentioned Sinclair, is of some interest, but trying to fit everybody in that you want to isn't always of possibility at the moment, especially until we know more around some of these rookies that are coming in. All right, in regards to value picks, it'd be interesting to see how this guy fits in. We know he was injured last year, and that's Kitty Coleman. So do the Lions give him, winning the flag, they can give him as much time as possible to come back. But I think he will be a popular pick if he is there in round 0. So one, again, bit of a place getter. Again, that early buy. So this is does affect how many of these guys you sort of can have. But if he is fit, ready to go in round 0 and he plays, it's going to be, especially if he puts up a good score, it's going to be hard to ignore. Tom Doday's there at 256, probably a little bit more expensive than I'd probably want to nearly pay for him, just coming back from those injuries. If he was probably under 200, he'd be locked in. Talking about just over 200, that is Josh Sin of 229. Just mentioned him before in regards to Kane Farrell. Again, looks like a big chance to take some halfback minutes this year. So it'd be interesting to see if they have a designated kicker, who's the player that gets the short kick in that they kick in to, and who do they like to get the ball in the hands. You see a lot of teams, you'll have the centre half back take the intercept mark, and they'll be looking for one of these runners who's got good pace or foot skill. So if Farrell and Sin for now are two players I'm looking at heavily. The last one on field is the new Saint, and that is Toby Travalia. I know I've absolutely butchered that as always. 172, so a little bit pricey, but defender mid. The Saints were very keen to draft him, and I think of all the sort of players of that first sort of top 10, it's always good trying to look at players who are going to have that sort of halfback role. I think a lot of the rookies now, they do come in and find it a lot easier than obviously if they have to come and play forward. And I think Toby coming off that, especially the way the Saints play, if he's around that halfback with Sinclair on Wanganeen Malira, I think that he can definitely get hold of enough ball down there. Could be that sort of guy that comes off the bench, rotates on. The only issue with some of these rookies is how much the sub is staying this year. So does he potentially get sub time? At least at 172, it's easy to sort of go down if somebody puts their hand up. Geelong are usually pretty kind to us, so that'll be interesting to watch. Alex Tyru's there, but a little bit taller. That's the one I like. Gipkus, I'm not going to probably fall for the trap 2 years in a row. I want to see him back playing a lot longer. Bo Allen is in at D7. The bit of controversial with the Eagles during the draft. I know a few people weren't happy that he traded back. They traded back, but I think firmly in their mind, they were always hoping to get the local boy, Bo Allen. A lot of hype about him. He was looking at potentially Melbourne and Richmond a lot higher in that side, that top 10. Should slot into halfback in his first year. So, yeah, I can see him probably, as long as there's no injuries, being locked in. It's probably that bench position, and that's a dual position player that's going to come very handy when we are using our flex early in the season. And another dual position player, and this guy, especially the fact we'll get a look at him hopefully in round 0, if he's there and performs well, else Harley. I hope I haven't butchered that too much, from the Essendon Bombers. So he was looked at last year closely because he was picked up in the middle of the season and absolutely tore a VFL game to shreds before he got injured. So I think the Bombers have big hopes for young Sard there, and there might be a bit of a reshuffle of their team to get him in there in that half-back line. So at 119, he's going to be a very popular D8. And again, a mid-forward, so a mid-defender. So if you do have a mid-defender in your midfield, it gives you a bit more flexibility of moving players around as well. So I can see some people might start him in the mid, some might start him in the defence. But yeah, going to be a very popular choice for this season. I don't know if the scope of some of these guys, obviously rookies, it's always hard to sort of what they might get, but always half back, you're always a chance for that sort of 55, 60. So, yeah, anybody who can get the sort of the ball in their hands and hopefully they trust them and let them sort of do their thing. Again, sub risk is always going to be high, but sort of you hope with these top talents that they're probably less likely than some of the others. It also comes down to, like, when we sort of see these first teams, like West Coast, again, sort of still developing. St Kilda and Essendon around that mid-table, they are trying to push, but they probably do need a little bit of an addition, a bit more flair, and these young fellas can give them that bit of spark. So you hope that they'll get a good run at it. And you hope maybe there's another rookie there that's getting picked, or maybe an older player, which allows these guys to get as much game time as possible. All right, to the midfield. I've been playing around with this. When I first saw it, I was very tempted to put LDU in there, who I can see he's going to be one that's going to come in and out of my side. I do like players out of contract year. So I think... But I just I think he could be in for a big one, but at the same time, it kind of depends on his sort of midfield breakdown. I think he's more of a pure midfielder, but with Wardlaw, Sheasel, McKercher, Dersma, Powell, Phillips, the list goes on and on. Luke Parker coming in, sort of, do they try to play him a little bit more forward? Does he do it more off spurts off the bench? So, but then, how much do they risk with him being in that contract year? Now, I think he probably stays, but until players are signed, you just don't know. So I do like him, but I managed to find the extra money to go up to Bont. So, it's always easy to have the highest paid player and then go down from there. But yeah, so Bont's in there at 681, and he is a very good captain choice most weeks. Zach Butters, number 2. Again, I'm probably a bit big on Port here, but I think you need Port Adelaide players early. Their early draw is it doesn't actually probably get easier for them out after the first few rounds. So Collingwood at the G first up. The Pies coming off a round 0 match, so at least Port will be a little bit fresher, but that is a tough game. But then they get the Tigers, the Bombers, Saints. Hawks, a tough one, but that is at least at home. Swannies, the Roos, Dogs, and then the Showdown. So I do like that mix of growth. Like the Showdown's always a tough game for them, but I would be backing them to beat Adelaide, back them to beat North, St Kilda, probably Essendon, even though that is away, and Richmond. So that they could be on for a fast start, and if they are, then I kind of want Port players in my team. All right, and the next one, so I've tried to put in 3 top-end premiums in here, also probably because of the captain, vice-captain reason, and also trying to pick guys who do not have that early buy. The one I really like is Caleb Sarong. I absolutely love their fixture this season. I think this is the year Fremantle really jump up and challenge in that top 4 region. I think they've got the draw to do it, and early on, the great thing about Fremantle is of when they play their game. So they've got Geelong first up, who are also coming off a round 0 match. That's down Geelong. Then they play Sydney on a Sunday, Eagles on a Sunday, Doggies on a Sunday, Richmond on a Sunday, and then it starts getting a little bit more earlier in the week. But for those first few games, Sarong is a great backup captain option. And not only just a great backup captain option, but Eagles, Doggies at home, Richmond, Melbourne, Crows, Saints. That's probably as easy as you can get. They only probably the one they're missing is North. So, and they do have in round 12, round 14, so those bye periods. Actually, their bye period draw is brilliant. So they have the Suns, North, Essendon at home, St Kilda at home. So again, he's one that if Sarong's fit and still in our teams at that stage, he was going to be a great captaincy or vice captain option for us during that bye period. All right. Okay, so the next two, a little bit controversial. I think, no, they can be popular just because of their price, but it is the Melbourne duo of Petrarca and Oliver. They've both been looking really good at training so far. It'll be a must-watch through preseason. If they're fit, it's going to be hard to ignore. But at the same time, I understand if people have reservations just because they're getting burnt. But I actually don't think Melbourne are going to be in for a big year. But Clary and Petrarca are both value at their price. Petrarca not as much, but we know he can go 110, 115. Clary at 450 is a bit of a steal if he shows any sign of form. So it all depends on the preseason. Hopefully they are training together or like every session, because we want them pushing each other and getting the best out of each other for sure. So it's kind of hard to ignore them, especially when you look at Oliver and the players around him there. So you've got players like Pendles, who's obviously aged now, Setterfield, who could be in or out, Wardlaw could be in for a good one. He's probably the one that is of interest of that price, depending on role and how much time. Dangerfield's obviously a lot older now. Berry, Chiera, sort of guys that you just wouldn't pick. You'd have to go down to a dual position of Baker, who might be a little bit of interest. So it is kind of the right price point there. Will Ashcroft is also in that mix. I don't have him in at the moment because he does have that early buy. I do like him a lot, especially after that performance in the grand final where he won the Norm Smith. So I'm keeping him out there at the moment because I want to see how he does and how Clary does during this. So Ashcroft in that first game, and Clary through the preseason, because it's much easier to go Clary down to Ashcroft. So that's the fail safe that I have put in, because there's not much else to go Clary down. So if I keep Ashcroft there, it's a quite easy move. Even Petrarca, Petrarca down to Ashcroft gets me 110k, and then I can sort of look at maybe using it elsewhere. Let's just say Farrell doesn't have the role. Farrell up to, say, a Sinclair or another premium guy. That's a little bit of the playing around with the team at the moment. Outside of players who are outside of contract year, which are interesting, players that move clubs, the hard thing with those defenders were the Collingwood team, with the early buy. A team that does not have the early buy is the Adelaide Crows. So I'm putting both of their new recruits in for now, which is James Peatling and Isaac Cumming. So Peatling's coming in at 352 this season, and Isaac Cumming at 287. I'm really interested to see kind of what role both of them have. So they're in for now because I want to watch them closely throughout preseason. I want to see what happens with Laird, how Draper comes on. Like, I don't mind the idea of Draper, but I think he'll be there round one. But it's just more of a question: is he, does they have him sub? What's his rotation like off the bench? I just kind of want to see a little bit of that through preseason before I go there. But Peatling and Cumming being senior players that they've obviously chased from the Giants, they're going to be important roles. So if Laird goes half back, does Cumming go half back? Does he play a little bit in the midfield? We saw Peatling. He had a real good run at it at one point at the Giants there last season. It was probably the kind of disappointed we haven't seen like a kind of full season. I was probably disappointed for the Giants that they lost him, because I thought he was just starting to hit his straps and, become a really good player for them. But like you look at the early on, there's 26, 18, 27, which is all been sub-affected. There was a 20, 11 and 14, again sub-affected. But once by the late in the season, and maybe that was when they started getting word of him, looking around, and they were trying to keep him, 93, 133, 96 and 100, and finished the season with a 97. And he did have 2 tons earlier in the year there too. So here is a guy that averaged 65 for the season, but on that run home, outside of the 40 against Freo, which probably wasn't his best game, you take that out, and he was averaging over 100 in that, 5 game period. So can he get anywhere near that? But at 352, if he gets even 90s, we could be making 150k on him. So I think he's definitely worth looking at. And even Isaac Cumming, for that matter, I think it's just a steal at that price. And again, just because they're non-Victorian teams, they can sometimes lose a little bit of focus, and especially players coming from the GWS. But I think they need to be both high on our radar. We know Isaac Cumming has performed high before, and I'm just trying to see where he actually would have been quite low because of not playing. Where is he here? Isaac Cumming, there is Isaac Cumming. Last season, he only came back late in the year, 67, 99, 65 and 36, but it's the previous, we've got to go back a couple of years, but we have seen some good scores from him before. The 2022 one is the most interesting one, where he averaged 94, and he did have a top score there of 135, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tons in that year as well. So just as, there's history there of scoring, averaged 93 in 2021. He is a guy who, given the opportunity, given the role, can average close to the 100 mark, and at 287, it feels like an absolute steal at that price. All right, moving on. We've got the last one, and this is the only rookie I've got on field at the moment. This guy may even start as my sub. Actually, I'll scroll down this way. So for people who don't have Supercoach Gold, you can kind of see some of the players in there. Sam Banks, kind of interesting to see if he does get that Daniel Rioli spot. There's a lot of talk about him training there, so I don't mind him at his price. But I'm going to go down a lot cheaper. The player I've got on field at the moment is Elijah Hewitt at 122k, just because he has played before for West Coast. It's not like it's a brand new rookie coming in. I think if I feel like him and that sort of group that they have been drafting is they're going to continue to invest time into them, and I'd expect to sort of see Hewitt feature a lot more. He's out last year with an injury, but I think what do we end up averaging? 45 in his first year. He did have some good scores around that sort of 60 to 80 mark. I think given the opportunity, and if he can string some consistency together at 122, that's a fantastic price for him. I definitely can get a period of 55, 60 out of him, and make us some early cash, which we all like. Xavier Lindsay is my next one for Melbourne, who's 158. I kind of like him a little bit more than Josh Smiley at the moment, the Tiger. I just want to see how the Tigers put together their midfield. But I think Smiley, of all the Richmond players, is the most likely to debut in round one. But Xavier Lindsay, just because of sort of Melbourne's mix, we know they lost Brayshaw. They've got time to kind of plan around it. He's looks like he's going to come in and get some midfield minutes. So it could be Petrarca, Oliver, and then you've got sort of Rivers, Viney, and could Lindsay be sort of that fifth? Can Lindsay actually spend some time down at half back as well? There's a lot to like, and a lot of raps about this young fella. The last two are a bit speculative at the moment, and that is Detoli from Sydney. have heard a couple of things about him potentially getting an early look. So it'll be interesting to see how he goes early, because if Sydney are fully fit, it's going to be hard for any rookie to break in. But maybe the new coach having a look at some players that he might like. And Tom Goss is the other one, bit of a speculatively picked there. I can't even spit out. But yeah, it'd be hopefully he gets an early opportunity. But yeah, until these sort of rookies here, kind of it's more what sort of we see through January. There's always that January and that, and then as we get into the early match sims, some of these players start to put up their names. But again, we do have 99k rookies this year, so hopefully maybe Patrick Retexco or Xavier Fisks. So one of those two, because they're Geelong love playing, bringing in players that we haven't really had our eye on. So I did talk about that in the pod the other day, that we know the Cats are known for doing that and bringing in us a left field. So I wouldn't mind like a 99k in there. That would be fantastic. But outside of that, those rookies can lock in. For the rucks, well, Maxi Gawn, we'll see how he progresses over the preseason. Did cop one the other day, and apparently he's going to be missing up to 6 weeks of training. So, yeah, should be back for Feb, but we'll just sort of progress Big Maxi as the season comes on. Maybe his understudy will get an opportunity. Tristan Cherry is in there at R1. Marshall's another one I'm just sort of leaving alone at the moment. I was about to sign that an SPP player. Also picked up the Dobson in the draft, probably the best ruck in the draft this year. So does Marshall train a little bit more up forward? That is the word that has been happening preseason. Still will do the bulk of the ruck, but they are trying to get him some support. So those are the two I'd leave alone. Nate was actually, fantastic last year. And he's going to have to take more of the load again as captain. So maybe a little left field roughy, and Tim English, it was probably a down year for him, and that was 108 average. So still a fantastic player. So the only other one I was looking at maybe is Tom DeConning. Just want to see sort of what the breakdown with him and Pittonet is. Again, contract year. So, they're going to give him every opportunity. I guess Brodie Grundy can't be completely discounted there, but DeConning is one that everyone is going to probably be looking at. I'm going to go a bit more of a cheaper option for now, just because we do have best 18s and a flex position. West Coast desperately need a ruck, and they got Matt Flynn, who used to be at the Giants. He was, came through the academy with Briggs, spent a lot of time training and playing in the NEFL and VFL with him, and then has now left to get a better opportunity at West Coast. Bailey Williams was their main guy last year. I think Flynn is a better ruckman and is going to be the one that's starting. So at 261, it's going to be hard to leave him out. And my R3 at the moment is Dobson, but I am waiting for St Kilda's ruck 99k it should be to be added. But yeah, Dobson at the moment can be in there as my R3. All right, moving on. We've got 9 more positions to fill, and this is now where the flex comes in. So there's a forward line. There is a ton of value this year in the forward line. So at the moment, I've only got the one primo, and, well, technically primo because some of these guys were former primos. I get the thoughts on Rankin. I kind of want to see what Adelaide do with their midfield structure. Yes, he's the spark they need in there, but now they got Draper and, Peatling and Cumming. They already got Laird and Dawson. Rochelle was trying to get time in there. It is going to be tight for spots. So the only one I really like of the premiums is Jason Horne-Francis. Nearly averaged 100 last year, and more just, again, that Port Adelaide start to the year. If he's playing, if it's 40%, 50% midfield time, it's going to be hard not to ignore him. Definitely can go for a run of 105, 110 during that period. I really like Horne-Francis. Again, it's going to be hard not to start him. Okay, and now all these value picks. So you got Liam Baker. There's one. I know I didn't mention Jack Graham before, but I know if you were looking in. But Liam Baker, the Mr. Fix-It at Richmond, does he get settled into a spot? So one to watch, and I know he's going to be a popular one. Then we go down to, I think it's 392 was the next one. Actually, at 416, Shea Bolton has averaged close to 100 before at Richmond. If he gets that half forward role like Dylan Moore and pushes up, and is that guy who's on the attacking side, bringing the ball into 50 and also getting more opportunities to kick goals. He is a must-watch at 416. Do like him. Chris is very big on Matt Kennedy. Probably don't think the Bulldogs was the right choice there. Wanting more midfield time, and they've already got enough midfielders who get pushed out. So, but if he is getting midfield time, 414, it's hard. You're going to have to watch him as well. Jack McRae's the one for me, moving from the Bulldogs to the Saints for that more time. They needed the more support around Jack Steele at 392. We know what McRae can do. There's definitely some value there, and pretty well at the same price. Bailey Smith missed all of last year, going down to Geelong, not to just work on his cotton on promotions, but to play football, and he should be locked around that Geelong midfield. If he's in that centre bounce, well, he could be F1 this year. It'll be interesting to see where he kind of goes in drafts. One that'll be a lot of hype again. I think he's still the most Instagrammed followed player in the AFL. So there'll be a lot of love for Bailey Smith. Scrolling down, there are a couple other value players as we come through here. The big one I currently don't have is Luke Parker, but there is Jack Graham at 376. So be interesting to see how he fits in mid forward again. So he will have some support, especially if he gets a midfield role. Luke Parker 343. We know he's averaged, 90s, 100s over at Sydney for a long time. Just how many midfield minutes does he get? Is he more of a half forward? Is he there as an on-field coaching role? I'm just going to leave that be for the moment. But I do like him, and I will be monitoring his preseason closely. I wouldn't go near Jake Stringer. The one I do like is Caleb Daniel next at 269. So that is real value for us. Should slot in down at half-back or the back pocket. We know they did bring in Zach Fisher last year, who was, apart from injuries, did put up some good scores for our sides. And, we expect Caleb Daniel to deliver even more. The little helmet this year at the North Melbourne Footy Club. So this is also a bit ways why I'm trying to avoid Parker, because if I do end up with LDU, I don't want a whole team of Roos players. Already got Cherry, Daniel and Sheasel in there at the moment. Just trying to diversify over a few of the sides. Daniel, pretty well the big issue last year, as we all know, was used a lot as sub. Just couldn't break into that Bulldogs team, but has in the past been such a fantastic player for them. It'd be good, interesting to see how what opportunity he does now get at the North Melbourne Football Club. Finished the year with a 97 and a 107, which did boost his average from 42 to 49. So we potentially could have got him cheaper. So many sub-affected games where if we look back, 2023, and even by the end, it kind of had a little bit of a drop-off. But at one point, he was averaging 104 before dropping off for a 92.8 for the season. 2022 was a 90 average. 2021, we had a 94 average, 93.9, but we'll round that up. And 2020, we had 101. So this guy, if he can get anywhere near 100, he nearly should be a lock in most people's teams, if not all. And the fact he's dual position as well is a fantastic for us. All right, moving down. So I'm going quite a lot cheaper here, and this is the Richmond key forward. I'm not going to try to let my bias in too much here, but Tom Lynch at 180k, 183k, absolutely looking in ripping nick. There is obviously a long time until the season starts. Now, this is preference with depending where he lines up. If Tom Lynch is the full forward, I'm less inclined to pick him even at 183k. But just because the delivery and the amount of delivery, I don't think will be as much. If he's the centre half forward, who's obviously getting up the ground, at 183, he should be in nearly everyone's team, because we know on any given day, getting in that position, he can put up a 120 to a 140. We did have that period from him a couple of years ago where, maybe it's probably 3 years ago now, where he was just smoking the competition. I was actually tempted to pick him last year when he was looking, I think he was about 300k. Just didn't get on the park at all. But yeah, a fit Tom Lynch is somebody we've got to seriously consider. So where was he? So Tom Lynch last year only had the 63, the 11 subbed out, 64, and then I think it might have been a 32 against the Hawks. But yeah, the year before again injuries. So he's probably had 2 massive years there of injuries. But yeah, averaged 94 in 2022. 2021 only had this 70, but still that's good value. Did finish the year with a couple of hundreds. And then there was a year there, I think, I'm trying to think where it was, but there was a period of time there where he absolutely went absolutely berserk in the competition and started putting up some stupid scores. I know that I think there was a 180 there. I'm not expecting that sort of return to form, but this is here it is. It was the 2022 season. So this when he averaged 94. So that included a subbed out 3. But he had a period there where he went 167, 185, and 125. And then at the end of the year, went 123, 104, 177, and 132. So this is a 2022 Richmond who, wasn't in premiership contention there. We're sort of just coming off that. And it's, so if he strings 3 or 4 games together, that like absolutely massive weeks. Like that's the sort of, you could be putting on 100, 200K in a matter of, a month. So that's, it's hard to ignore if he's fit, if he's in, got to seriously look at him. Another one in that price range, this guy's changed clubs again for the 3rd time, 150K. He's gone down to Geelong, and that's Jack Martin, a guy that's always shown a world of potential, but we probably still haven't seen the best out of him. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen down in Geelong. So, I back them to pretty well do what they did with Stengel, have him there in the forward pocket, and he's going to kick goals for them. So, Geelong every year seem to be up there, and they always seem to have success with players like that. So, hard to ignore. And talking about former Cats, Quinton Narkle. So he's now going to join Fremantle. I think he's more in there until we see what other forward rookies are there. But the fact that they have picked him up, there is potential there. Could he come on in as a half forward or a forward pocket? Just because he is a senior player, and I think Freo are trying to push towards that top 4 and potentially a flag. So, I'll go the senior body until a rookie puts his hand up, and hopefully it is a cheap rookie, because if it's 102, 99K or in that sort of bit, I'm making 40 odd K for my team to go and spend elsewhere and upgrade. So it's always easier to have a more expensive guy. And the last forward is Jacob Constanti. So Juddy Clark is one I do like again from Richmond. I'm staying away from Dev Robertson for now. Also, I think Emmaus from the Freo Dockers is in that mark about the 119. So there is Neil Erasmus, but just don't see sort of how he pushes in with now Bolton and a couple other guys also wanting opportunities. Maybe could be a candidate for the sub-vest. But Constanti is in that same range again. They've picked him up from Sydney. High draft pick, was a first-round draft pick, just couldn't get into that Sydney team. North Melbourne do need a pressure forward, so I think he could come in. If he can lay 4 or 5 tackles each game in the forward line, maybe get on the scoreboard and kick a goal, he could be a 50-point, 60-point player for us in that forward line early on. And at that price, that is value. Lucky Last is another forward. He is a mid-forward, and he is from the St Kilda Football Club. And I will do this to make it easier. But Mateus Philippou, so he is the one I also got over Luke Parker at the moment. Again, it's just going to be interesting to see sort of how he fits in. Back from injury, but geez, last year it looked like he was going to set the world on fire, and then unfortunately did go down with an injury. But that period of time, and I think these are the sort of guys that we breakout stars in the St Kilda Saints do need guys like this firing. It actually was round 17 and 18 had 112 and a 101, and then came back in round 21, and then round 24 85 and 80. I did have some games earlier in the year where you look at them and think they're sub-affected, but they actually weren't. But he was playing more deep forward. They did put him in that midfield, and then really took that possession count out. There were games there where he was having 4 or 5 touches in a game. Always sort of more around that 9-10 mark, not really impacting the scoreboard either. But once he got into the midfield, not only did he impact the scoreboard, but he took his possession count against the Swans. There was 26 touches. You had 24 against the Lions, 20 against the Crows. But the big one was in 2 of those games, he laid 9 tackles. And the other 2, he laid 5 and 3. So if he can get around that 4 or 5 tackle mark and get 20 points just from laying tackles, and then still have that 20 possession count for 13K, he's a guy who, 85, 90, maybe slightly more, but there's definitely 100 to 150k meat on the ball. But this year with the forwards too, if you're looking at those key the top forwards that are in the list for us, if I get rid of the Saints for a second, you'll see that the options were a bit slim. Like Dylan Moore, fantastic, probably priced where he is. Luke Jackson, we've got to see what happens with Darcy before we want him. Hogan and Daniels, are they going to repeat what they had? Probably not. And then it's a real drop-off. Harry Mackay, Jeremy Cameron, Neil Bourne now, who's at the Crows, Tracy Waterman, Kurnow. So we're talking kind of key forwards there. So, we're looking at sort of these guys who can push into the midfield. I think Phillipou, he's that with McRae, that part of that, not only that addition to what St Kilda didn't have for parts of that year, for last year, but the Saints also, with some of those players that they've added, Winhagen, Owen, that next generation that are pushing through, I think they're going to have to give as much opportunity as possible, and Phillipou's the one that's probably going to lead that from the gut. So, that's where I am at the moment. I'm pretty actually happy with that, and we'll see kind of what happens through that pre-season period. January, I think it's usually around that sort of late January we start getting sort of match sims for like inter-club games and that, and then we break into the actual proper games. So this season we've got round 0 kicking off on March the 6th. And then we also have an AFL preseason, just the 1 week, but Tuesday, February the 25th, and that'll be kicking off with Geelong and Essendon. So you think the interclub games, most teams will probably organise, firstly a game against another club, maybe the week before or something, or maybe around that, let's say the weekend there would be the 20th, so maybe around the 13th, 14th, we might see a couple of them, which mean the interclub games will be maybe the sort of the 7th, and then we'll probably get sort of match sim, late January. So we're probably, come Christmas, probably only a month away of really seeing that and seeing how these teams are going to start, going up against each other. A lot of clubs will do sort of like, A team versus B team, and we'll sort of get an idea of who is looking likely to feature. Hopefully you enjoyed that, guys. Most importantly, have a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays, or however you celebrate it, and a fantastic new year. Stay safe, enjoy the festivities, and we'll be back better, bigger and better for AFL come next year. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and we'll talk soon. Bye.